Good morning, everyone. I am Junami O. Akabal, and I'm the first reporter for this chapter entitled Planning the Test. So, in the previous chapters, we have discusses about a test. So, what is test, and why is it important, especially on our chosen profession? As defined in Chapter 1, test is a systematic procedure designed to measure the quality, ability, skill, or knowledge of students by giving a set of questions uniformly. Intended learning outcomes. At the end of Chapter 7, students are expected to prepare a table of specification for a classroom test. So in the chapter 7, we will be talking about the following. So first is the overall test development process. Second is identifying purpose of tests. Third is specifying the learning outcomes. Fourth is preparing a test blueprint. And the last is other forms of test specification. Overview. Assessment in a classroom environment is accountability focused as it reflects the success of the teacher and learners in the teaching-learning process. The test results can be inferred to speak of how well the learners have studied hard to handle the subject for course and the teachers, of how effectively well they have delivered instruction. These chapters intends to assist you and the teachers in planning for the development of classroom-based tests to ensure their validity for measuring students' achievement. It will provide guidance on. So first is specifying the purpose of the test from the very outset. Second is identifying what essential learning outcomes to be measured. And the last is preparing a test blueprint that will guide the construction of items. First is the overall test development process. The process of test construction for classroom testing applies the same initial steps in the construction of any instrument design to measure a psychological construct. So as you can see, the illustration 7.1, it illustrates these common steps shared by various authorities. So first is planning phase. It is where purpose of the test is identified. Learning outcomes to be assessed on clearly specified. And lastly, a table of specifications is prepared to guide the item construction phase. So in planning phase, we have first the identify purpose of test. So the purpose of test is to assess the performance of the students. Testing helps in assigning grades of students as their performance. Second is specify learning outcomes to be assessed. So it is setting shared expectations between students and instructors, helping students learn more effectively, providing clear direction for educators when making instructions and assessment decisions. Third is prepare test specifications. So test specifications provide information on how the academic standards are addressed on IFS and contain specific rules and characteristics that guide the development of a test content and format. Next, we have identifying purpose of test. Testing as an assessment mechanism aims to gather valid and reliable information useful to both learners and teachers for formative as well as summative purposes. So, assessment should be valid and reliable because validity tells you how good a test is for a specific situation, and reliability tells you how trustworthy a test. We can draw valid conclusions from a test score unless you know it's reliable either. If a test is reliable, it is not always valid. Classroom formative assessments seek to uncover what students know and can do to get feedback on what they need to alter or work on further to improve their learning. Next is teachers can use this feedback to map out their own pedagogical moves to improve learning for appropriate mentoring. So the goal of formative assessment is to monitor student learning and provide ongoing feedback that can be used by instructors to improve their teaching, and by students is to improve their learning. And also, it helps students identify their strengths and weaknesses and target areas that need to improve, as well as low faculty identify where students are struggling and address problems immediately. So next we have, what is multiple choice? Multiple choice items, for instance, lead themselves well in detecting and diagnosing the source of difficulty in terms of misconceptions and areas of confusion. Each option or alternative can represent a type of error that students are likely to commit. I have here a very simple illustration of a multiple choice item with distractors selected to represent possible errors of students, or the possible answers of the students. So this is a simple illustration. So the item is 9 over 12 minus 2 over 4 is equals to blank. So the possible answers of the students should be A, 7 over 8. Error is getting differences in both numerator and denominator. B, 3 over 12, which is the correct option. C is 4 over 12. Error is changing the similar fractions to similar ones. D, 6 over 12. Error is getting differences between similar fractions. So how to get the correct option? So we have here the item 9 over 12 minus 2 over 4. So to get the numerator in the first fraction is multiply. 9 times 4 is equals to 36. Then to get the numerator in the second fraction is multiply the 12 times 2 is equals to 24. So to get the denominator is multiply the 12 times 4, so it is 48. So the denominator of the first fraction and the second fraction is similar. Next is we need to subtract the 36 minus 24 is equals to 12. And the denominator is we need to copy the 48. The numerator is 12 and the denominator is 48. So the 12 over 8, or the 12 and 48 is divisible by 4. So we divide the 12 and 48 to 4. So 12 divided by 4 is equals to 3. Then 48 divided by 4 is equals to 12. So now that's the correct option. 3 over 12. Alternative or distractors in selected response items can be in terms of popular falsehoods, misconceptions, misinterruptions, or inadequately stated principle. By obtaining the option plausibility of distractors, the teacher can identify what reinforced in the lesson follow-up based on the most frequently chosen error. So we can say that alternative, it consists of one correct or best alternative, which is the answer, and the incorrect alternative, known as distractors in selected response items, as the name implies, are those in which students read the questions and are presented with a set of responses from which they select best answer. So let's proceed to the specifying learning outcomes. So the learning outcomes, When we say specifying, it means to explain or describe something clearly and exactly. So today, you will be fully understand the learning outcomes as I explain it to you. So, assessment has changed considerably as advances occur in the field of education and cognitive psychology, particularly in defining learning and its domain for specifying the learning outcomes. Next is defining learning progress from being simple an accumulation and facts to create new knowledge according to Anderson et al. 2004. So it focused on defining learning standard in terms of outcomes. So let's spell out what learners should know and to be able to do as long as establish hierarchical neurons or cognition and it communicate both specific content and nature of tasks to be performed. So, and also it is processed for assess cognitive and address different learning targets defined by the intended outcomes. So, it considered learning targets include knowledge, recognizing, skill product, and effects. And last is essential to be achieved as result of instruction. Next is summative test given at the end of an instructional process. So as I mentioned earlier previously, the learning outcomes. So it progressed from the lowest cognitive level to the highest level attainable for the grade classroom test. So it needs to be carefully planned to ensure that they truthfully and reliably quantifying of what are the intended to be measured. So as important as these two assessment purposes is utilizing the test as means to inform the learners how they are learning and progressing.